I could never have imagined the opportunities that have opened up to me, and there's creativity in all of us. Just try and explore it. It may be singing, it may be painting. In my case, it was photography, but there's so many different levels of creativity and different styles of creativity. And just to explore what's inside of you and just start.
This is the Hillsong Creative Podcast, where we hear from creative experts, influencers, dreamers, and doers, what they've learned and what we can learn from their journey as we explore, respond, and create.
Hey guys, this is Rich Langton, and I'm so glad that you've joined us for another episode of the podcast. This is going to be a good one. I think you're really going to love it. So I was thinking about photographs, some artwork. I wonder if you've ever seen a photograph or a piece of art, or listened to a piece of music, or maybe watched a film and been so impacted, so inspired that you've walked away and had that kind of desire to do something like what you've just seen, or to go make films or to go paint. I know I've had that experience. Someone else's creativity has so inspired me that I've wanted to be like that person and do what they do. Sometimes that thinking is a bit misguided. I think I could be a filmmaker. I think I could be a famous musician or whatever. And so I get inspired, and then the reality hits, the reality of how busy my life is and all that's going on. It kind of floods my mind. And so then that dream or that inspiration, it just sort of gets washed away and dissipates over time. But then every once in a while, I'm reminded that it doesn't have to be like that. And today's guest is Tony Irving. He's a part of our church here in Hillsong, Sydney, and he's a huge contributor to the creative team. But it wasn't always that way. He didn't always see himself as creative, and he hasn't always been a photographer. But now he's a world-class photographer, and his artwork is sought after all over the world. Just a few years ago, he had an experience like the one I described, where he saw a piece of art. You'll hear the story, but he saw a piece of art and it so got into him that he decided to take action. He didn't just get inspired, but he leaped into that inspiration by jumping into exploring what it could mean for him to be a photographer. So as we jump into the episode, I think you'll find it inspirational. I think you'll find it life-changing if you let it. So let's jump straight in.
Okay, cool. So I want to talk a little bit about, you've had the last 5 years have been pretty crazy, right? So what do you do as a profession?
My profession is in the construction industry. I'm an executive in one of Australia's largest construction companies. I'm in charge of our estimating department, which means that I'm in charge of construction tenders that we do for projects of all sizes and all types.
Right. So this is your job, this is what you do. But then you have this whole other world that has come alive in the last few years, which is photography. Can you talk a little bit about how that started and just how that unfolded in your life?
I'd reached a point in my life with the kids growing up and being a soccer dad was coming to an end as my son got older. I walked into a gallery at Noosa one Christmas and stood there looking at the landscape photos, and walked out of the gallery and literally stood on the sidewalk Googling landscape photography, looking for something else to fulfill my life in a creative space, and walked down the street of Noosa and started reading about landscape photography and how to take a landscape photo. And that's how it started.
Had you ever been interested in photography, or was it something that it was just brand new?
I'd had cameras when I was younger, taking photos of the kids as babies and on family holidays, but never in a creative landscape photography sense.
Right. And so you just decided that you wanted to learn? Were you self-taught? So what did you do? How did you get from there? Okay, I think this is something I want to...
So I started on this journey of photography, and it started off as a hobby and something to learn, a challenge for myself personally, and then quickly developed into a love for nature and reacquainted myself with my love for nature and for the beach and the coast. I suddenly connected with a whole series of new friends.
Right.
That also enjoyed doing landscape photography, and they inspired me to be better. And then as I continued on that journey, I slowly started to see that God was actually changing the way I was actually seeing life in its entirety.
Right.
And it actually changed me as I went down this creative journey.
So cool. Okay, so in 5 years, this goes from a hobby, I think I'm interested in this, I'm going to learn, to you recently participated in a Google Pixel project. You're the member of the Canon Australia Insider Circle. You have images in National Geographic. Like, this is crazy. Do you sit there and go, this is crazy?
I do.
Does it feel normal? Is it?
Yeah, like sometimes I pinch myself. In other times, I just think that God's expanded my world to take in another whole side of life
Right.
that I hadn't explored. And I suppose I now realise that it's a gift that God had given me when I was born that I was never exploring.
Right.
I recently told my now married children, I whispered to them at the end of their wedding, I said, don't wait until you're in your 40s to start exploring your creative gift. If you can, explore it now.
Yeah.
I set it out. I always had a heart for, with my photography, to do the best I could. I was always driven to make it the best I could possibly do it. So that motivated me to watch YouTube videos on editing at lunchtime at work, to asking questions of other photographers around the world, being inspired by other creative people, trying to keep pushing myself to improve my quality to a point that I was happy with. And I suppose deep down to a point that I thought captured the scene that I was seeing and displayed God in that image, which was my real heart behind wanting to improve. I had this deep desire to see my images shared at church and to be used by church for showing God's glory.
Yeah.
And to also show God to people that didn't know him.
Right. I love that. So do you think that creativity was just kind of sitting there within you untapped and it was unlocked? Or is it something that you developed or taught yourself? Or is it just that you nurtured yours? What do you think? I'm curious.
The way I describe it is that I think it was like a Christmas present that was under my tree and I hadn't actually opened it.
Right.
So I always had it, but it wasn't until I started to unwrap it and then started to explore it that it started to grow.
Yeah.
And then once it started to grow, who knows where your creative gift could take you.
Yeah.
And for me, it was in photography, which has enabled me. It started off as landscaping. Now it's taking photos of luxury houses, of portraits, and now it's a matter of me exploring it even further and keep digging into what the potential of this creative gift is and how God could use it.
Do you have like a favorite image or a favorite experience of photographing something that stands out?
There's probably two answers. You can have favourite images because you love the image and you love the image quality, but you can also have favourites because they link you to an event, which may have been a good experience or a bad experience, but they link you to an event, and that makes that photo special to you as well. And so I've realised that every one of my photos has a story to me. So if you put any one of my photos up on a screen, there's stories. There's the journey to get to that point. It's the mountain you had to climb. It's the journey from Australia to Iceland. It's the journey to the beach on a Saturday morning and the things you experience, the people you were shooting with. There's stories within stories, and that brings out the fact that the image may be more of a favourite than another favourite.
Right. I love that because even here at conference, we had like a midnight mass. We had a worship night, and it was one of those nights where I walked away and I thought I could not put into words what had happened here. And I wanted to post a photo because I was like, this was so significant. I wanted to talk about it. And I didn't know how to describe it, but I looked through our photos that our team had taken, and I was like, I am so thankful for these images because I can't put into words what I've experienced, but these photos are actually telling the story of what took place here.
Yeah. And I think I sometimes feel that when I'm surrounded by incredible nature and incredible mountains, that I just stand in awe of God. Standing before these magnificent mountains covered in snow, and just stand there in awe of who God is, and then you capture that image and share it, and it just tells such a story of God's glory and God's creative power, which I think does speak volumes more than the words associated with the images.
Yeah, completely. Have you had any like key relationships, like mentor relationships? I know you did your own research and just decided to equip yourself and learn, but have you had key people that maybe came alongside you and mentored you in this kind of journey?
What I did, I used other people's images that I found through social media as inspiration for what I saw as my quality point. And so then I would actually start communicating with those people, and some of them were in France, some of them were in America, and I would start communicating with those guys, and they would actually share their style, their editing, their equipment, and then I started to try and replicate what they were doing and the way they were editing their images. And all of them were just incredibly giving of their time and were always open about trying to help me. And so I've then done the same now with other people when other people are asking me the same thing. So if anyone asks me a question, I always respond, always spend the time to try and help them in whatever point they are in their creative gift and their journey.
So community plays a part in that picture, just learning from each other and...
Yeah, and going out and shooting with other photographers has been a massive thing for me, and it's been another whole community of people, some Christians, some not Christians, and that's been incredible. And being able to connect with this whole another group of people that I wouldn't have connected with otherwise has been amazing. And you know, you go and shoot a sunrise, you have breakfast together, you share some editing skills and some tips on photography, and then you return, you look at their images, you look at your images, and it gives you a bit of a guide to how you're going in terms of your quality. And it's amazing watching people that might be all on a line shooting together, the way each person sees the scene differently and the way they interpret that scene is so unique to them and the way they see what's before them.
Right. Do you ever have times when it just doesn't come together?
Oh, look, there's times when you know, you head out hoping to catch a particular image and it just doesn't, you know, there's no colour, it starts raining or it just doesn't work. But I suppose I've just learnt then to rest. Just take the opportunity to just take in whatever the environment. I remember recently I was at one of Sydney's beaches and it wasn't that colourful a sky, and I just sat on a rock and just watched the ripples of the ocean just creating these little patterns on the sand, and just thinking how beautiful that was and how amazing God was in the detail of that. And that's the way my approach to my photography has kind of gone. You know, it's just resting in that moment.
I love that. How would you encourage other people like yourself that maybe, I don't know, have been stuck in this is what I do? What would you say to encourage them, like in discovering, unlocking some of that creativity?
I think I'd encourage people to just pray, ask God. There's creativity in all of us, and to just try and explore it. It may be singing, it may be painting. In my case, it was photography, but there's so many different levels of creativity and different styles of creativity, and just to explore what's inside of you and just start. And start with one thing, and if it doesn't work out, try something else. it's a matter of exploring, what's inside of you and asking God to birth things in you that you didn't think were there.
Yeah. And you have to just start, don't you?
Yeah, I think that's the key. I think you just start. You just don't know where it's going to take you. I think if I could never have imagined the opportunities that have opened up to me, and even deeper than that, the way I now see life and the way I actually see the environment, it's actually at a whole different level, and I could never explain it fully.
Yeah. Just
the patterns I see in the sky, the way I see light, it's just so different, and I could never have imagined that exploring my creativity could have changed the way I see life and see the world so much.
Yeah, that's incredible. Well, you are incredible, and thank you so much
thanks,
for
Annie.
chatting today. We appreciate you.
Oh, thank you so much.
I'm so inspired by Tony's story. I'm not sure if you're like me, but I just listen to that and just want to take action. He makes it sound so easy though. He saw a landscape photograph and he decided that he wanted to be able to take those kinds of photos. And so now he does. It sort of was like, I saw a photo and then I did it. But we all know that the reality would have taken a lot of work. It would have taken attention to detail and lots of attempts and lots of failures along the way. I wonder if most people allow all that stuff to stop them from doing what they actually are gifted to do. I wonder if you're like that. I know that I've been like that at times, where the stuff of life crowds out the gift or the desire to outwork my creativity. If there's anything we can take away from Tony's story, I think it's that inspiration is really important, that we need to look for inspiration and go for inspiration and, seek it out. But then also, inspiration without the action, it's meaningless. So Tony took action. He's worked hard, he's found companions and mentors along the way, and it's all in an attempt to glorify God. He's using his gift of creativity not just to do what was in his heart to do, but to really lift up the name of Jesus. And through all that, he's found that his eyes have opened up to new possibilities. The world has literally changed for him. Everything he sees is now different. God has revealed himself in all the details of life. He said that he looks at the sky and he sees color differently. He sees the details differently. And it was all because Tony saw a photo in a gallery and then decided to take action, to learn and to create. I'm not sure when you're listening to this, but for me and for when this is released, our Worship and Creative Conference is next week. If Tony's story has inspired you at all, then I'd love to encourage you to come and join us at the conference. It's going to be a whole bunch of regular people just like you and me who are trying to explore their creativity, to work out how they can take this gift that God has given them and make something of it. A lot of people don't see themselves as creative, and even people that will be at the conference may have questions about whether they're creative or not. But let me encourage you, we're all creative. Our Creator God has made us all creative, and maybe we've got to explore that gift that He's given us. Maybe we've got to unwrap it, like Tony said. I think that inspiration is good, but it's not the whole package. Yeah, we have to act, we have to do something, we have to take the inspiration and turn it into action. And so I believe that maybe coming to Worship and Creative Conference is that step you need to take. I believe in the conference and I know it'll help you. I know there'll be people there just like you, people wondering if they're creative or not, people just wanting to pursue the dream that's in their heart. And there'll be people with a gift who want to know how God might be able to use it. Our time together is going to be life-changing. I've seen it before, and I'm not just saying that, I actually fully believe it. And I guess that's why I would encourage you so strongly to be a part of it. So if I'm talking to you, feel free to go ahead and register at hillsong.com/WCC. And I suggest you do it before the doubt sets in, before the reality of life sets in, before the inspiration dissipates. Get onto it and do it now. And I hope that I'll see you there. Can't wait. But now, switching gears a little bit, This podcast is all for you. We do it in hope that we can help you creatively, we can spur you on and encourage you in your individual creativity and in your church teams. With that in mind, we're doing a new thing. We're inviting you to ask questions that I can answer on future episodes. And if I can't answer it, I'll find someone in our team who can. So if you download the Anchor app on your smartphone and search for the Hillsong Creative Podcast, you can leave us a voicemail message. We'll hear your questions and answer them on future episodes. So why don't you do that now? I'd love to hear from you and start the conversation. Next up, we've got this week's story for the Psalms of Ascent, and you can find out more at hillsong.com/WCC. And don't forget to join us in the 100-Day Creative Challenge.
In Psalm 133, it says, how good and how pleasant it is when the people of God dwell together in unity. You never stumble into unity. And so unity has to be something you fight for because it doesn't naturally come to us all the time. And so we find ourselves in every different part of, the creative realm, whether it be being an artist out in the secular market or being a painter or serving as a singer in a worship team or an MD. But I think we often get our priorities messed up and we put the best song at the top of what needs to happen, or our ideas at the top, or our voice to be heard, when the whole time God is saying, no, I love all of that. I love your excellence. I love you putting your best foot forward. I love you pouring out your heart into what you're doing as a creative. But I think the ascent doesn't come from having the best product per se, but it's when we put unity at the top of our relationship, not our ideas or our plan or our agenda. How will they know you are mine? Jesus said, because of your love for one another. So you do have to make it an intentional thought, an intentional habit to go, I know I disagree with you right now, or I don't think that's the best way forward, and go, cool, I'm going to put that aside and I'm just going to champion you in this moment because that's what's needed to build unity.
Well, that's it for today's episode. I really hope you've enjoyed it. If you'd like to subscribe, you can do that pretty much anywhere you get podcasts. That's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and even YouTube. We'd also like to hear from you too. So if you have a comment, you can do that on our Instagram, which is @HillsongWCC, and we'll see you next time.